Shalom, my friends. Last week I posed a question that I myself didn't know the answer to. My wife Shayna had contracted corona, and so had my baby daughter Dvash. But I was tested 4 times and I came out negative each time. So was I immune? Well, I have an answer. No, I am not immune. After being tested this past Tuesday, my results came back positive. I had indeed contracted the coronavirus. It was the cutest version of the virus possible because apparently my yummy little Dvash gave it to me. I guess after one of her direct facial sneezes, that must have done the trick. But I had the virus, no question about it. And within a day or two, I started developing symptoms. Not terrible symptoms, but I was dizzy and disoriented and more tired than usual, which is why the message I'm sharing with you today may not be as coherent as it usually is. But the doctor said that the sickness could often kick in after a week. So I really don't know still what's in store for me. And to some degree, I'm just wondering what may still unfold in my life right now. But I need to make a confession. I started getting really concerned. You see so many cases in the news and on the media about people my age or younger having horrible things happen to them, even dying. And would I share in the same fate? If something happened to me, what would happen to my wife Shayna? What would happen to my little Dvash? When the results came in, I had more than a few moments of fear. And that is what shocked and disturbed me, really perhaps even more than the corona itself. I was walking around believing that I had a much higher level of internalized faith than that getting corona wouldn't shake me in that way. But the first couple days I had some real anxiety. I never had anxiety about the thought of getting corona. But now that my results came back positive, my stomach was tied in a knot. And I've often reflected in the past how the punishment or the consequence of a lack of faith is built in. It's the resultant anxiety, that release of that unhealthy cortisol chemical that makes things like corona even worse. The fear itself can cause that which you are afraid of to manifest. But even knowing that, it isn't always easy to just turn it off. And I talked it through with Shayna a number of times. She strengthened me, and she comforted me, and she reminded me time and again that there's nothing to be afraid of, that Hashem runs the world. And I prayed and reflected and massaged that truth into the situation and remembered that my faith should not just be that I'll get better, but that whatever happens, it's in Hashem's hands and it's for the best. Of course, I need to do everything in my power to take care of myself. I've been taking vitamin D and quercetin and zinc and trying to get sunlight, but ultimately surrendering to the truth that this isn't just happening, but that Hashem is in charge and Hashem is running the show. That has truly been the calling and the challenge and the mission right now. But it didn't come immediately to me. And it didn't come easy to me as I arrogantly thought it would. And I thought the reason could be that at the moment, my head was not truly connected to my heart. The illusions of this world, the confusion, the doubts, the regrets were so overpowering that I didn't fully believe that Hashem was really running the show. I couldn't have truly believed it, because if I did, that fear and anxiety wouldn't have tied that knot in my stomach. And it was that fear that helped me connect with the fear that the Jewish people had in this week's Torah portion. And not only this Torah portion, and the Torah portions to come. Because as the Jewish people crossed through the sea that was parted on both sides, which our sages compared to a birth canal with which we were birthed as a people. We were redeemed from being slaves to Pharaoh. We were redeemed to being born as being slaves to Hashem, servants to the one true God. And that everything that happens from that point on is designed and orchestrated with the purpose of transitioning their fear from being fear of man to being fear of God. Even the manna itself. In verse 4 it says, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Hineni mamtir lachem lechem. Then Hashem said to Moshe, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven on you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain portion every day, that I may test them, whether they will walk in my Torah or not. The manna itself was a test. Everything was a test designed to facilitate, to enable growth in both our faith in God and our fear of God. Even the sea itself, our sages teach, did not actually part until a prince from the tribe of Judah, named Nachshon ben Aminadav, went so deep into the sea that there was no turning back, that he would have drowned. Only at that moment that he would have drowned, only then did the waters part. But now I want to tell you the part of the portion that most deeply touched my soul, that really spoke to me as I sat home with the coronavirus starting to do its work on me. The nation had crossed the sea miraculously. God had denied the laws of nature and caused divine honey-fried pancakes, manna, to fall as food from them on the sky. There were miracles all around them, and nonetheless, they continued to have crises of faith. The final crisis of the Parsha was when the people were thirsty for water. Now, I'm not trying to downplay the power of thirst, because true thirst can be overwhelming. But the people were so thirsty that they thought they were going to die. In chapter 17, verse 3, the people said, they said to God, they murmured and they said, "Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our cattle with thirst?" They accused Moses and therefore God himself of bringing them into the desert to die of thirst. God told Moshe to hit the rock, and he did, and water came forth from it. In verse 7, he called the name of the place Masa u'Merivah, because of the contention of the children of Israel and because of their test of Hashem, saying, "Is Hashem with us or not?" That was verse 7. And what was verse 8? What immediately follows the doubt of the children of Israel? Chapter 17, verse 8. Amalek came and battled against Israel and Rephidim. That's right. Immediately after Israel expresses their doubt and questions God, whether God is truly with them, they're attacked by Amalek. Now, I think that it may be worth doing an entire session explaining the nation of Amalek, their spiritual roots, and why their most focused, solitary mission in the world is the destruction of Israel. That may be worth diving into a few weeks from now when we discuss Haman on Purim, for Haman was an Amalekite. But for now, I'll just explain the idea that was refined by Rav Avram Tzvi Kluger. He explained that the Jewish people are always attacked by an enemy who embodies the spiritual flaw from which they themselves suffer at the time. And what was that flaw? Well, Amalek's purpose in the world is their war on God. Their mission is to cast doubt on whether God really runs the world. As a descendant of Esau, Amalek knew the boundaries of the land that was promised to Jacob, and they knew it did not threaten their territory. They never had a prior battle with Israel. Their motivation to attack Israel was pure, to cast doubt on the existence of the God of Israel. They knew that every nation in the world saw the unprecedented, blatant miracles God did for Israel, and that every nation was trembling in fear of the God of Israel. And so they brazenly led a charge and they attacked. Amalek represents doubt. They have the same numerical equivalent of safek, which means doubt. And it is only when Israel has doubt in their hearts that we're vulnerable to being attacked by Amalek. Amalek is an external, physical manifestation of our own fears and doubts. This is why when Moshe held his hands up, Israel was victorious. And when his hands were down, Amalek had success. Our sages say it was not some sort of abstract magic, but when Israel looked at Moses during the battle and his hands were raised, their hearts were directed towards Hashem, and they were successful. And when they looked at Moses and they did not see his hands directed towards heaven, their hearts were therefore not directed towards heaven, and they lost their strength. They lost their success. They lost their power. This is further demonstrated by who Amalek attacked. Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 18 tells us that Amalek attacked Kol hanechashalim acharecha, the weak who were straggling behind. What does this tell us? That if we really feared God more than we feared man, when we really feared God as we should, and we saw that our Israelite brothers and sisters were falling behind, we would have gone as slow as we needed to go to make sure that the weak stragglers were among us. It is only because we feared Amalek, because we feared man more than we feared God, that the weak were left behind, and therefore we were vulnerable in the first place. So in sharing my fears with you, my friends, I'm not trying to criticize myself too strongly. I'm not saying this to condemn myself or to be hard on myself. I'm a human being. We're going to have our moments of weakness. We're going to have our moments of fear. The question is, what then? Do we give into it? Do we revel in it? Do we nurture it? No. That's when the work begins. Those moments of fear are opportunities in which Hashem is exposing to us the kinks in our own armor. Those are opportunities to build our faith and enhance our spiritual fortifications. And as I told Shana later, to some degree, Hashem is in the fear too. Perhaps He purposefully pushes us out of our comfort zones, not only to give us the opportunity to grow, but to give us the chance to experience gratitude and joy when He comes to our aid, when He saves us from that which we're afraid of. The words of King David keep coming to mind again and again throughout this process. Ulecha ezbach zevach todah. And to you, Hashem, I will offer a sacrifice of thanks. That with Hashem's help, when my family is on the other side of this thing, I will offer a sacrifice, an offering of thanks, whatever that means. Shana and I have been discussing it. Not only our family, but Israel, the Jewish people, the world, all of you, all of our families. We will be so grateful when we're on the other side of this. Friends, thank you for your continued blessing and your continued prayers. My name in Hebrew is Ari Yehuda ben Rachel Esther, and I'm grateful for your prayers. May Hashem bless us all with health, spiritual and physical health, and may He grant us the faith to banish the fear and the doubts from our hearts and to finally defeat that age-old enemy of Amalek and bring the redemption for which we have all been praying. Shalom, my friends. Thank you. We love you very much. Back to you, Jeremy.